Hey everybody, welcome back, Music Corner. As always, I'm your host, Ketamine. Can I say that on YouTube or am I gonna get like banned or something? No, as always, it's just little old me, little old Lav. And about 2 months ago, me in the past did a video talking about the 20 best albums of this year, 2022, thus far, and in the 2 months since then, like 10 great new albums came out completely out of nowhere that totally invalidated like half of that video. But that's what the recap is for. So as we so often do, we're going to take a look at the last 2 months, July, August, talk about some records that I was a little disappointed by, talk about some records that everybody's talking about, and then at the end we're going to talk about the best of the last 2 months. And I've been doing these recaps for like 3 years now, and this is the most good albums I've ever had to recap in just the span of 2 months. And while I don't think any of them are like great, amazing, best thing I've ever heard good, it's just solid, strong consistency across the board. A lot of albums over the last 2 months that I was really excited for managed to live up to the hype, which is cool. We'll get there though. As usual, I'm going to start with some records that disappointed me, that let me down. Because there was so much good music, I didn't have time to review a lot of stuff that isn't great, even though there were certainly some records that came out in the last 2 months that were not great at all. But there are 2 records that I did at least expect to be good that didn't turn out that way. The first of which being the recently released Hot Chip album, Freak Out release. Great dance pop band in the 2000s, and even though I was in the minority in this, I liked their previous record, Bathful of Ecstasy, and I was hoping to see them build on some of the cooler, more psychedelic and soundscapey experiments on that record in this follow-up. Turns out this is a bit of a return to a form of much more conventional dance music, and I'm not crazy about it. It's a very inconsistent record. Some of the singles in the beginning are alright, but the wheels kind of completely fall off, and it's certainly below what I would consider the quality grade of a band like Hot Chip to be. It also gives me no pleasure to report that I was not crazy about the Steve Lacy album Gemini Rights. If you saw my 20 great songs from bad albums video, you know that I'm not crazy about Steve Lacy's first album either, but once I heard the single Bad Habit, which has become a pretty big hit, love that song, one of my favorite singles of the year, probably my favorite hit song of the year so far. I was really genuinely excited for this record, and while it's a step in the right direction, relatively speaking, it's still not great. It's still inconsistent, and there are some really, really rough songs on here that I just don't know how they made the cut. So yes, there's some very worthwhile stuff. There's a great bedroom jam on the back end of this thing, and of course, listen to Bad Habit if you somehow haven't. It's incredible, but as an album, I was disappointed by this. I guess while we're here, I can also mention Jack White's album, Entering Heaven Alive, one that I was excited for because I liked a couple of the singles, and there are a handful of pretty good deep cuts in the mix, particularly the spectacular opening track that everybody seems to just totally be enamored with. But as somebody who wasn't crazy about his album earlier this year, I was hoping that this change into a more reserved, more acoustic style would be good for him. This is obviously one of my favorite singers and songwriters of all time. And this album's not great. If anything, it actually made me re-appreciate some of the brash experimentation on his album from earlier this year, Fear of the Dawn. Let's put all those disappointments behind us. Wow, that sounded harsh. I didn't. Moving on. And just talk about some of the projects that everybody has been talking about in the past 2 months, like Joey Badass, who returned with 2000, a sort of pseudo-sequel album to his breakout 2012 mixtape 1999. Love that project. Thought this project was pretty good. A little bit all over the place. There are certainly some experiments he takes on here that do not go over well and sees him stepping way out of his comfort zone, but ultimately this thing is a solid rap record, one of the better that I have heard this year, generally speaking. And if you like any kind of conscious hip-hop or gangster rap, or you like any of Joey Badass's music in the past, it's definitely worth a listen. I wasn't really anticipating loving this new Lil Uzi Vert EP, and I don't love it. I've been, you know, a critic of Uzi's in the past. I caught a lot of shit for my Eternal Take review, but I thought it was cool that they came out as non-binary, or like they, them, or whatever, and I went into this record with, you know, open arms, hoping that it would be good, and honestly, it's decent. By Uzi standards, it's pretty good. I like it as much as pretty much any Uzi project I've ever heard before, or like more than most of his projects. I genuinely think this is like one of his better collections of tracks he's ever put out. The fact that it hasn't really seemed to catch on with fans as much probably speaks to the fact that I am clearly not Uzi's target demographic, but who cares? Shout out the new, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Dami and JD Beck album. These two have been popping up here and there for quite a while now. This is the first official release on Anderson .Paak's new label Imprint, I believe, and it's solid. It's a very funny, very tongue-in-cheek approach to jazz music. There are genuinely funny tracks like You Don't Have to Rob Me, but it's clear that both of these musicians are very talented. They have a vision for their music that is cohesive. They make sense together as a pairing, a lot of sense, and while this isn't the best thing I've ever heard in the world, it wouldn't surprise me if they continue to collaborate in the future and do something like insanely good. You could almost classify this new Megan Thee Stallion album as a disappointment, even though I think it's a solid record, and probably purely in terms of pop rap and, you know, rap albums that are gonna do numbers, it's, you know, decent, at least average. But given the high end of what Megan is capable of, her best stuff, given that we were coming off a year where she released Thought Shit, such a banger. She's got WAP in her back pocket, and the lead single to this record, Plan B, another super banger that I really, really wish was a hit because it's one of her best songs. This album is once again inconsistent in the same way that almost all of her studio projects are. I'll say that this is a huge improvement from her last studio album. I'm still not sure she's anywhere close to reaching her full potential. I think she really does have a versatility she can pull off. She's just not really deploying it well in a number of songs on this record. So I'm just here hoping once again for the next Megan Thee Stallion project to be the one where she really puts it all together. And finally, in this section, in the year when a lot of people have been talking about Animal Collective, there's that geologist side project with Julia Holter, but we also have this a little bit more high profile collaboration between Panda Bear and Sonic Boom. And yeah, I was excited going into this. I liked the first two singles, Go On and Edge of the Edge, quite a bit. And I think this record is solid. It's decent. There are moments that are a little all over the place. There are ideas that I'm not crazy about. It's certainly not, to me, on the same level as some of Panda Bear's best solo work by himself, but after having heard about how long these two have been collaborating and sharing their musical minds to create a collective vision, I was very excited to go into this project and see what came out. And yeah, there are plenty of really infectious, watery, 60s influenced pop bliss songs to be found in the mix. If that sounds like your cup of tea, it's definitely worth checking out. We're into the good shit already. That's so exciting. I love that. If you like experimental hip hop, right at the buzzer before I released my best albums of the first half of the year list, More Mother dropped her new project, a wonderful collection of very dark, very meditative, very experimental hip-hop cuts. Even calling this thing what is conventionally understood as experimental hip-hop feels like a limitation because she's wandering in all kinds of different directions with so many great collaborators and, you know, jazz codes. The jazz influences and jazz instrumentation runs deep on this record, but it is done in a way that is very I'll call it rewardingly obscured and dark. I like it quite a bit. If any of that sounds good to you, I think you're going to be able to jump right into this album if you have any experience with, say, some of her contemporaries. An album that I loved when it came out, and in less than 2 months, it has already grown on me quite a bit. The hilarious, exciting, fantastic new Viagra Boys record, Cave World. I think I gave this album credit for how creative and how funny it was, and that certainly continues to ring true. It is hilarious. It is way funnier than the past 2 Viagra Boys albums, which were also pretty funny. By post-punk standards, these guys are literally some of the kookiest, most creative, and unique in the entire game. But what I realized the more that I returned to this record is just how fucking invigorating and exciting it is. Like, this thing is just a rush. The vocals and the pounding drums and the heavy distorted rushes of guitar, there's just so much to like on this thing. I'm really enjoying it. Highly recommend it to any experimental rock fans. And if you're an experimental rock fan, you surely already know that Black Midi released a new album, their second in as many years, and yeah, it's awesome. It is completely fucking unhinged. It is so exciting, so insane, some of the weirdest, craziest stuff they've ever done, and they're already a weird, crazy band, but you know, that song, The Race, is insane. The lead single, Welcome to Hell, is like the kind of proggy jam style of post-rock that they did a lot on Cavalcade, taken to a way more insane conclusion. And I gotta say, my personal favorite, the song that I continue to return to, Eat Men Eat, is like one of the most vividly torturous and yet exciting things I've heard all year. The last minute of that song is literally like the most blood-rushing experience I've had with music, period, this year. In a different sense, my blood was also kind of rushed by the wonderful new Beyonce album, Renaissance, Act 1. Enjoyed this quite a bit. Hip house and house music and dance music has kind of randomly become like the sound of the summer. And yeah, once again, Beyonce's proving that she does it better than any of her contemporaries. Excellent collection of tracks here. Does it run a little bit longer than I would have if I was in charge of what did and didn't make the cut here? Sure, maybe there's a track or two that I would cut, but there's so many high points. Church Girl is already becoming one of my favorite Beyonce songs of all time, not to mention Break My Soul becoming one of the biggest hits of the summer. A great, irresistible, infectious track. So many of these songs are catching on, and it's so easy to see why. The respect for the source material and attention to detail that Beyonce put into all of this, so obvious, so apparent, and it's just a great record. Like many other people, I was excited to hear the debut album from Chat Pile. Certainly in hardcore circles, they've been one of the most talked about new bands for a couple years now, and this was a highly anticipated debut, but a very good one that managed to live up to a lot of those expectations. Absolutely insane. Know what you're getting into. If you're going into this record, it is some of the craziest hardcore, and I don't necessarily mean crazy as in like the most jittery, up-tempo, loud, abrasive, like almost punky brand of hardcore. Like, this shit is just raw as fuck, very experimental, occasionally very technical, and this band is just willing to track down and pursue any idea, no matter how crazy. I mean, the very school shootery, like, spoken word cut on here has emerged as one of my favorite songs. I think everybody that deals in experimental music has been memeing the Grimace song that's the closing track, which is also fucking awesome, about, you know, getting high and hallucinating fucking Grimace. Also, the way that they approach that anti-homelessness song, or that sort of like housing crisis protest song, is raw as fuck and incredibly impressive. 2 EPs I want to shout out real quick from a little EP roundup I did of hip-hop based EPs. The new Dochi project. I was not super familiar with this artist until she was a XXL freshman this year. But yeah, she impressed me as a freshman. Seeing SZA and Rico Nasty in the track list of this thing obviously caught my attention, and both of those songs, they kick ass, particularly the Rico Nasty song. Like, I sort of thought I knew what Doechii was bringing to the table when I heard her freshman, you know, like round table talk and freestyle and all of the stuff that she did there, and then listening to some of her biggest hits up to that point, and even hearing Persuasion with SZA, which has blown up to become one of her more well-known songs. But I was just not fucking ready for this Rico Nasty track. What a banger to kick this album off, and the beat on this song, oh my god. If this EP is any promise of what is to come, I am all of a sudden incredibly excited for whenever we get a proper studio album from Doechii next. And a DJ Premier with a star-studded EP kicking off this little project that Nas is doing, this like hip-hop anniversary project. It's a series of EPs representing different eras, different styles of hip-hop to paint hopefully a picture of the entire genre, all its complicated niches and subsets, and it's being handled by different producers, which is a super, super cool idea. The way that producers are so important to hip-hop, I think that is really, really smart, and I think that DJ Premier got the whole project started off with an absolutely awesome collection of tracks. I can't wait to hear more from this, but also just don't skip on this. There's so much hip-hop. There's an abundance of hip-hop that you can listen to, particularly even in the old head style of hip-hop, in a more conscious style of hip-hop, that it can be easy to, you know, brush things under the table because there's just so much. But definitely don't let this slip by you. If that's the kind of thing you like, you're gonna want to hear it, trust me. And while we're there, I might as well touch on the new Black Thought and Danger Mouse collaborative album. Liked this quite a bit, knew that I would after liking pretty much all of the singles. Impressive roster of features, but really it is just the poise and experience of Black Thought and Danger Mouse that make this record a total breeze to enjoy. I think a lot of hip-hop fans have been digging this thing, and it feels obvious to praise it, but that's just because it's good. Like I said, poise of these two veterans shows through on song after song after song. This is a good record. Like it, learn it, enjoy it, love it, continue to listen to it, and recommend it. Also, one of the records that sneakily became one of my most anticipated albums of the year, the new Teen Suicide album, Honeybee Table at the Butterfly Feast. In abstract, I wouldn't think that, you know, a new Teen Suicide record would be something that I was just foaming at the mouth for, that I was just so hyped. But after the second, third, and fourth singles from this thing all really blew me away, I was really, really excited about it. And yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I love the versatility it puts on display. I love the willingness to wander in these very experimental directions that Sam Ray is going on. I know that, like, American Pleasure Club existed and released music, so it's not really like the first, you know, Teen Suicide album since 2016, but it does sort of feel like there was a conscious effort to make a return to what made a record like Joyous Celebration, Stir the Honey Pot so enigmatic to people who were, you know, edgy 16-year-olds when it came out. And I appreciate that a lot, and I think that Sam Ray caught my review of the record on Twitter, and he seemed to have positive thoughts towards what I said about the record, which is great because it's great. And a review that's just coming out today, I think, on the day that this video is being uploaded, or maybe the day before, the new JID album, the new JID project. That was embarrassing. Yeah, it's been a long time since we last heard from JID the Kid over here, but clearly he has spent that time honing his craft and becoming a more methodical MC, a more mind-bending lyricist. Everything that was good about JID on that DiCaprio project is like turned up even more here. He fixed some of the problems with the repetition and the lack of artistic evolution and experimentation that I had with that last project on this new one. It's a very versatile record. Like most albums that, you know, are pushing an hour, there's certainly a track or two in the mix that I think I can do without, but I'm not going to hold that against him too much given how much great stuff there is in the mix. I know I talked about a lot of hip-hop in the past, I don't know, 10 minutes, but if I had to recommend one of the full-length projects that I have talked about in this video, at least within the realm of hip-hop, I think it would be this one, honestly. And that's it. That's it. There are plenty of records that I want to get around to reviewing and talking about. I want to talk about that new Michi Darko album. As I say this, within the past day of recording this, there's been new projects from DJ Sabrina, the Teenage DJ, and Kenny Beats. Don't know if I'll get around to covering both of those, but hopefully I will. Want to shout out Flo Milli. Haven't gotten to review that record, hoping to do it in a rapid fire this weekend. And also Petrol Girls. I was late to this album. It came out before my 20 best albums of the year video did, but it definitely would have made the list. I sat on it and I waited for too long to put it on the list. Heard it afterwards, and god damn does this thing kick ass. One of the best rock records I've heard this year. One of the best punk albums I've heard in the entire 2020s, honestly. If that's your thing, definitely check out Petrol Girls. Definitely their best album, and one of the best, like, femme punk rager records I've heard recently. That's it. Though it is September, which if you're a repeat viewer, you know that means that the top 50 songs of 2012 video is coming out later this month. I'm still sweating the order. We have the roster down. I think the last time I talked about it, I had a short list of like 75 songs left or so, and I made it down to 51 for a while. Had to make one of the harder cuts I've ever had to make in any of those decade retrospective videos, and now I'm just struggling to try and put it all into order, hoping that comes out around the middle of the month, and that'll probably be my next video. So I'll see you there. Kisses, good faith, goodwill, love, heart, lust. No, goodbye.